Amazing. We're live, everyone. Welcome to this another Ask Your Mentor Anything live. Today we have Paula. Hello, Paula. How are you?
Hi, Virginia. I'm good. How are you?
I'm fine as well. We're listening ourselves, so let's switch off. Okay. So, welcome everyone. Let's wait a few minutes for everyone to join us. So, today we have an interesting topic to discuss, a new initiative that I found out recently, and I would like to share with the rest of the people. So, I see people joining us. Let us know, guys, where are you watching us from in the comments. I'm always very curious to find out where are you watching us from. And if you have any questions related to this topic, let us know in the comments so as to be able, let's say, to discuss it further. So it's Women's English Confidence Circle, building clarity and confidence in high stakes communications. And that's something that you created, Paul. Is that correct?
Yes, it is something that I created actually very, very recently. I'm just launching it. So it's been in the making for for a while, like the idea of it. And then I decided to just go ahead and launch it really. Yeah,
Congratulations.
not too long ago. Yeah.
So let's start by introducing yourself. I know that people that might be, let's say, at my age, at least they will know you. You've been also in the past active in the industry, giving presentations, and I remember that you were also very generous to go live with me on a different topic. I think we had discussed about legal translation or something, maybe
Hmm.
your specialization, if I'm not mistaken. So let's start by introducing yourself with your new, let's say, developments in your career throughout the years. So people that they do
Okay.
not know you or they know you, they might be able to learn more about you, your background, and your new, let's say, things that you're doing in your career.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, so you're absolutely right. I was very active in the translation industry for a very, very long time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a lawyer linguist, which means that I trained in both fields and I worked in legal linguistics, well, legal translation and then legal linguistics for about 20 years. And I would say about 8 years ago, I switched from freelancing to corporate. And then from corporate, I went into academia.
Okay.
And recently, I moved to Germany. And when I moved to Germany, I decided to go more into teaching rather than spending that much time translating. So I still do translate. It's still something that I do. It's just not something that I do as actively as I used to. I'm more in the teaching realm these
Teaching
days.
role. I remember that you were
Hmm.
involved in the academic field, even if when you were
Hmm.
back in the USA, if I remember correct, and also Latin America
Hmm.
when we were talking in the past. So currently
Hmm.
you're in Europe. Amazing. So we're 1 hour, let's say, difference here. That's good. Okay, guys, if you have more questions about Paula's background, let us know. And also, if you have been knowing Paula, maybe you know that you have noticed that she has changed her last name. So if you know Paula from Arturo, that's I think your husband's name. Is that correct? That you've
Yes,
been using
yes, ma'am.
recently. So we use the new, so as not to confuse people. So let's start by introducing the initiative. What is it exactly? And to also mention that I was invited to become part of it, and definitely I need it because also it's not my native language, and I know that this initiative might be also of interest of people that they might be native also in English, but you are the best, let's say, person to actually tell us more about this.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me tell you a little bit about what the circle is and
Exactly.
why I created it.
Mhm.
So basically, I'm going to start with the why because I think the why provides context
Mhm.
for the what.
Mhm. Mhm.
When I started working in the corporate world, I worked mainly in big law. Well, my job was in big law. Big law was a very, very large law firm where I worked with lawyers who spoke English as a second or foreign
Mhm.
language. So
Mhm.
my job was partly in legal linguistics and partly also in language teaching and language training. And that's where I kind of became aware of how communication, even though it's English and we tend to think of it as a language training kind of thing, the broader skills that we need to communicate effectively in English as a second or foreign language um, go a little bit beyond traditional just language teaching, right? That you can know all the present perfect you want, but in a high stakes communication, that's not the information that you're going to draw from to be able to communicate effectively. And then what I also noticed working in this very high stakes environment is that the way that women communicate is sometimes different, but also the way that women's communication is interpreted is also different. And so started looking a little bit into the research on that and the different, I would say the different, the different demands that are made from women when
I
they
was
have to
about to
communicate
ask
in
you
these high
why
stakes
communication, why communication feels different for women working
environments.
in English as a second language in comparison to men, I suppose.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So basically, one of the things that has been documented and that happens a lot is that women have, it's a little bit harder for women to manage authority versus warmth. The
Mhm.
expectation is always that women are going to be both warm and authoritative, but if a woman is too authoritative, then there's a lot of research that shows that that can backfire on her. And so that means that women in these high stakes communication situations, women do a lot of self censorship, they monitor themselves a lot more, they struggle and hesitate to participate freely, they kind of hold back. Because the cost can be so high sometimes of just being misunderstood in these situations. Men get a little bit more leeway. And so that was sort of where I started noticing this trend. And then, as you know, well, maybe the people here don't, but then I went to Washington, D.C. to work at Georgetown University, which is where I went into academia. And I was
Mhm.
also working in legal high stakes environments with the students there. And I noticed the same thing, except more internationally, because there we had students from all over the world. So this has sort of been on my mind for a really long time is, you know, what are the needs of women specifically when we're communicating in these high stakes environments, and how do we help women to be able to show up as their best selves in these situations?
Do you
And
think, yeah, I'm sorry I'm interrupting. Do you think it's lack of confidence for women? Do you think it's the fact that women are always, let's say somehow when the actual environment is dominated by men, or let's say, I don't know, maybe legal industry has to do with that as well that you were into? Is it a combination? What's your, let's say, thinking about that, what you've seen so far?
absolutely, yeah. I think confidence plays a huge role in it. Um, Although it's not the only thing. I do think it is very important. That's why I put confidence into the name of the circle, because when I do work with women and I started, and especially after moving to Europe, where I started doing more one-on-one work individually with women, what I realized is there's always a little voice in the back of their heads that is sort of working against them in these high stakes situations. So you have women that are even who have self-confident, who are very confident in their own abilities, in their knowledge, still in these high stakes situations will feel like they lack the confidence to speak. And it's more about having to communicate in English in the high stakes environment. So it's a lack of contextual
Mhm.
confidence that very oftentimes works against them in these situations.
I don't know if this has been clear to everyone, but and you describe that how we define high stake or high stakes communication. Like people who would like to join this initiative, what should they consider as high stakes communication in order to feel that they can be involved in the initiative?
Absolutely. I think anybody who needs to communicate professionally and whose ability to communicate will somehow influence their goals and their outcomes are finding themselves in a high stakes situation. So, what makes a situation a high stakes
Mhm.
situation is what it means to you as the person who's doing the communicating. So, for some people, a high stakes communication situation can be something that for other people feels really easy. Like for you, Virginia, jumping on a live on LinkedIn, you
Definitely.
just do it, right? You've been doing it for a really long time, but other people might be mortified by the idea of having to do something like that.
100%. I've seen that happen. Yeah. Whenever I say someone like you could go and do maybe not live, even videos, they don't want to go on a camera. So would you consider that as a high stake for someone that they wouldn't like to go on a camera, for example?
Absolutely. If it feels high stakes to them, So,
Okay.
my place is not a place of telling you what high stakes is, but
Okay.
rather whatever it is to you. If it's stopping you from showing up as your best self and it's somehow hindering you from growing professionally, then it
Okay.
feels high stakes for you. And so then what I think we need to work on specifically with women is helping them to gain that confidence to be able to, do that work, to do that thing that they're trying to overcome in that situation. And for some women, it's just meeting with their boss. Like I
Mhm.
work, I have one person that I'm working with in particular, and she tells me, it feels high stakes, and it's just when it's with my boss. She's fine when she's communicating with anybody else, but there's something about the way the communication works with this particular man, in the way he communicates, that makes her feel very judged, very evaluated, and so on and so forth, that makes her sort of feel like she has to, retract into herself.
I think
And what we want to make
many people will relate with what you're describing right now. Yeah.
absolutely, yeah.
So I'm sorry, interrupted you. You were about to conclude, to add something.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that it looks very different for different women,
Mhm.
but there is a full and very interesting body of research that some of the work that I'm doing right now in Germany and will be going a little bit deeper into in the near future, has taken me a little bit more toward doing research in neuroscience, doing research in psycholinguistics and in applied linguistics, and sort of figuring out how these different communication patterns work, and also what women need to learn in order to be able to, overcome these situations. So regardless of how you feel, whatever feels high stakes to you, the solutions there don't depend so much on the situation, but rather on the tools that you have available and the resources that you have available to yourself, to be able to work through those
Speaking of
situations. And
which,
that's what I want to focus.
yeah, I'm very curious about the tools because you just mentioned them, but I also have seen when you sent me a brief description of what we were about to discuss in the initiative. So I'm always very curious to learn about the tools. Maybe we can clarify a few questions before we proceed with the tools. I think everyone would be very interested. Just to clarify that the circle that we're discussing right now is a volunteer, let's say, initiative that anyone can join. Just to clarify that, like, who can join? And I was very curious to find out, based on your current experience, what high stake situations. I know that you mentioned that is not, that's a particular very important, the situation itself, but maybe some people, they can feel themselves relevant to the initiative if they can find out themselves through the actual examples that you can give us about high stake. You mentioned one being in front of a camera or going live on social media, or as you mentioned, having a meeting with their clients or maybe a boss, as you mentioned already. Like, do you have any such examples that you have seen or encountered so far? Because I know that's very new, the initiative, but maybe you've been doing one-to-one,
Mhm.
or
Yeah,
maybe through the research. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, I can give you some examples. So imagine, so some of the people that I work with, for example, are people who regularly have to negotiate, right? So
Mm-hmm.
they work in negotiations, or they work in mediations,
Mm-hmm.
or there's somebody who has a role that is in between the people who
Mm-hmm.
are in the negotiation. So, for example, I can think of an example relevant to your world, Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
Interpreters sometimes
Mm-hmm.
find themselves in these situations.
Mm-hmm.
And so, of course, I won't go into, the interpretation aspect of it because that's
Mm-hmm.
technical knowledge, but it's how do we help these women show up? And if the interpreter has to voice a concern, for example,
Mm-hmm.
in a certain context, well, that can feel like a high stakes situation for an interpreter. For a translator, a high stakes situation can feel like having to talk to a client directly, or having to, if you, I don't know if everybody does this, but when I worked as a translator, I used to have one-on-one meetings with authors sometimes to go through any of their questions or any of their comments. That can feel like a high stakes situation for
Oh,
a professional
interesting.
translator. So basically, anytime that you are communicating in English professionally, whether you work as a freelancer or you work at a broader institution, and the nervousness of the situation combined with the nervousness of the language are kind of stressing you out, then that's what feels high stakes. And that's where the information that I'm going to be sharing in the circle will be able to help you.
Amazing. So I was curious about the non-native. You mentioned it's clearly that the lack of knowledge, maybe, or the lack of practice of the language, that actually we need more in order to become more competent or to feel more confident in front of our clients, as you mentioned, or boss, or whatever the situation might be. But what about the native speakers? That's only about the nervousness that you mentioned, like the anxiety or the stress. Like they can get help from that initiative as well, or they need to work with you on a one-to-one basis in a different format.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, the way that I will be rolling out the content, I will be focusing on broader communication and the broader communication issues that women face
Mm-hmm.
in general when we're in these high stakes environments.
Mm-hmm.
So, a big part of it is going to basically be about, what we need to learn about communication ourselves to be as effective as possible and to sort of work through some of these challenges that we face. Of course, there's an added layer to that, which is when English is your second or foreign language, there are certain things that feel extra hard. What is interesting about it, though, is that there's a lot of the tools and resources that you can use actually work for both. So,
Mm.
for example, one thing that professional women often worry about is sounding too harsh when they speak. And
Yes.
this is like harshness is a concern, especially of women who are more self confident in other realms or who have professions that are a little bit stronger or associated or sometimes male dominated. They're
Yeah.
worried about this, right? And harshness is the same concern for native speakers and for non-native speakers. All women are worried about sounding too harsh in certain contexts
Yeah.
because the stakes are high. And you just don't want to be that person in the room, and you don't want to be seen in that way, and you don't want to be judged in that way. And so the expressions and the strategies, the communication strategies that you need, it doesn't matter if English is your mother tongue or not. It's going to be the same. You still need to adapt accordingly to be able to, if you want to convey warmth, then convey warmth. Or if you want to convey assertiveness, but without harshness, the strategies are the same. The way you use your voice, your intonation, your
Yeah.
posture, all of that is
Especially,
going to be the same.
yeah, especially about harshness that you mentioned. I think it's more likely to happen when you speak your native language. At least in my case, I feel that I get that when I speak in my native language, like Greek. In my case, rather than, so I feel like sometimes it's better when I speak a second language because I cannot express myself that freely that I can do in my, and that in some case might work better. Like as you described. So let us know, guys, if you have any questions about the topic. It's very interesting. I get so many questions, but we need also to cover all the topics that we discussed. So do you think that we have covered the common struggles, Paula, so far? Like you mentioned, hesitation, tone, accent, pressure, losing access to your full self, as you mentioned here. Is there anything else you would like to add about the common struggles?
So I think one of the other really important common struggles, and this one will resonate more probably with non-native speakers, is the idea that, or the misconception rather, that any error in language means that you are not necessarily competent in your profession. So a lot of times the reason why non-native speakers struggle in certain environments is because they think, well, if I mess up, if I make an English mistake, if I mispronounce a word, if my grammar is a little bit off, then people are going to think I don't know what I'm talking about. And unfortunately, what the research does point to is that in certain contexts, language errors are judged harshly and are in fact associated with incompetence. But the research also tells us that having the right strategies, the right communication strategies available in the moment, and developing the right flexibility in the moment to make yourself understood when you realize that you made a boo-boo and you need to fix it, will still help you overcome that situation and to some extent sort of neutralize that perceived incompetence.
And I think in our profession, talking about translators and interpreters or in general language professionals, it has even a bigger effect because we're considered competent, because it's our language, it's our profession to be, but that doesn't always apply to the reality, like the fact that we cannot speak English if English is not our language combination. For example, included in our language combination shouldn't be just, but because we attend international events or conferences and we talk to other people in a language that we are supposed to talk in order to be understood, and we're judged, like we might lose jobs or clients because we don't sound competent enough to the other person, especially if the other person is more competent or even a native speaker. So I think what you're doing is really helpful to the people that they are in the industry that, let's say, we have in our mind network at least. And I suppose that most of the people here, that they are not willing to disclose themselves. Let us know where you're watching us from, guys. Yes, they need that. I'm pretty sure that they need what you're doing, going practically. So if someone would like to join, what they should do, and definitely I would like to know what they should expect. Like I joined, I haven't received any information yet, but I would like what to expect. Let's say I will be better in communication. I will make less mistakes, for example, in the future. It's just that I will feel less pressure or less anxiety.
Yeah, absolutely. So joining is really easy. For now, just hosted on WhatsApp because it's still a very tiny little initiative. There's an interest form that I have a link to, and I just ask everybody to fill out the interest form so that I can get to know every individual member.
Can I share it? Can I share it in the comments? Paula,
Absolutely,
is the same that I filled in? Is the same that I filled in, or
it's the same one that you filled in. Yeah.
Something that you would like to share? Okay, I'm trying to find it. Okay.
Okay. Right.
I will say, guys, in the comments. So if you would be interested in joining the initiative, you need to fill in. It's very short form, very fast to fill in. Yes.
Okay. So you
Can you hear
basically
me?
just fill in the form. Yes.
Okay. Perfect.
Okay. So you basically just fill in the form, and I will add new members on Fridays to give people the weekend to get to know each other and introduce each other. And then on Mondays, every Monday, I will be releasing some micro tips. And it's going to be an audio recording where I think there's something wrong with our connection. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you well. I can hear you well.
Okay. So I was just saying on Mondays, I will be releasing very, very short audios where I break down a specific communication issue, a little explanation of that issue, what the research is telling us about that, so that we can better understand the process itself and what's going on there, why this is happening to us, and then a micro tip or resource for people to overcome them.
Is there any assignment that people can go through, or they just need to listen to the audio that you mentioned and the tips, and how do they practice that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the reason I'm hosting it on WhatsApp is specifically so that we can have an open communication channel so that you can try the tips yourselves, and then you can discuss them and you can share what worked for you, what didn't work, what your experience was with that. So I want to make sure that basically all I'm doing is just providing you the framework and the information, and then it is up to every person to try it out and share their experience. And the discussion part is specifically so that we can all help each other out, support each other, add additional tips, and learn from each other's experiences in the implementation. So I'm trying to build a really supportive community for women to be able to learn together and overcome these challenges together.
And you mentioned earlier that you have been working with some people already. Was it in a format of a coaching? How have you been working so far? And what results do you expect to see, or if you have seen any results from the people that you have worked with so far?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have been working one-on-one with people, and I can give you my favorite example is a person of mine, a student of mine who I can't, I'm not going to mention her by name just to,
Okay, yes,
what's very interesting about her context is, first of all, she started as an English learner with me, and then that naturally evolved into coaching as we realized that what she needed wasn't English, it was communication. And And what was very interesting about her case is that her mother tongue is Russian, and Russian mother tongue speakers have certain characteristics that are slightly different from English speakers, but she is in an all English speaking environment surrounded by Americans, where her number one concern was specifically her harshness in her communication. So everything she said was constantly coming out in a way that sounded harsh to the people listening to her, and the feedback that she was constantly receiving from upper management was, you should improve your communication skills. And for a long time she thought they meant her English, and what they meant was her communication skills. So we started working on softening the language without her losing assertiveness, because in her case in particular, what's very interesting about her is she has a PhD in math. She works in development. She has a in IT development, and she has a PhD in math, a PhD in computer science. She is so qualified, so highly qualified for the role, and she was aspiring to a higher managerial position, and she kept consistently not being considered for that position because of this communication problem. So we worked together for a few months, and I can happily say that she finally got the promotion. So that is my number one favorite story, and she did learn. I'm sorry?
So fast
Yeah,
was it as well?
it was several months. She was working hard for several months, but she worked very hard at developing the right strategies. And one of the things in her case in particular, she what was hard for her cross-culturally, and this is also really important, is that she's from a very direct culture, and she's communicating with people from a very indirect culture. So a lot of the nuance was getting lost, and that made her come off as pushy when really she was just trying to ask questions. So what we worked on specifically with her is reframing questions so that they actually sound like questions instead of sounding like she's pushing for something and making people uncomfortable. And that was the first transformation.
But how we can identify what we might be doing wrong in our communication if we don't get that feedback from a boss or a manager, as you mentioned? Again, in that case, you got a feedback from your manager that you need to improve your communication. I suppose that you were able to review her case and give her some guidance to the right direction. You were able to identify that it was not only the language, it was also the type of communication, the way that she was communicating things. Do we need a mentor, a coach, yourself, or is it something that we can identify ourselves? So, for example, I can take, let's say, my example, that most of the people, they were telling me, I think that I have improved a bit, that I was talking too fast. And that's something that I have also in my native language, and that makes more difficult the message that I'm trying to describe or teach through my videos. So I've been trying to become slower, let's say, or to try to find a rhythm that my audience would find more appropriate for them or better understandable. But apart from the feedback that we get, from our audience, our clients, our boss, or whoever is involved in those high stakes communications, how we can understand what we might be doing wrong?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. I want to just quickly address the talking too fast thing, because that's fascinating. And that is very common in people who speak English as a second or foreign language. A lot of times it's because you're taught that speed equates to fluency, but that's actually a misconception. So English is actually quite a slow language. The average native speaker speaks at a rate of about 120 words per minute, which is rather slow compared to other languages, even though it feels fast. And the problem with speaking quickly, for example, is there's a lot of, in linguistics and applied linguistics and in psycholinguistics, there's a lot of research that points to fast speakers being interpreted as being less trustworthy than slower speakers. So basically the reaction that you can get in certain situations is, oh, she's talking fast because she's trying to confuse me.
I've heard that before, but I think in my case, at least because we're describing my examples, because I'm very fast at speaking in my native language. Greek is very fast in general. I don't know if you have that idea as well. So we speak very fast. I'm also supposed to speak even faster than the average Greek person as well. So I had that as a child. And I know that's something that I had to improve also in my native language. So yes, I totally understand the research results, but in my case, was something that I had very, like very natural to me, was to talk fast, which I had to improve also in my native language. But speaking of which, in general, how we identify our, let's say, things that we need to improve, what's going wrong? Maybe we get an impression, let's say, from the people around us that we need to improve something, but we do not know exactly what's going on wrong.
Absolutely, yes. I just want to really quickly close the speaking fast thing, because this is really important. The fact that other people perceive things a certain way doesn't mean that that's the intention that you're using, right? So the fact that people will perceive fast speakers as not being trustworthy doesn't mean that the speaker isn't trustworthy. It just means people have this stereotype in their mind, or this is how they react to it. And in answer to your question, when people don't give you feedback directly, I mean, I'm always a big fan of working with a communication coach, because then you get that feedback. If you don't have people around you to give you the feedback, then, you need someone to tell you this is what you're doing. If you don't have that, right, like you don't have access to that, then what I would always recommend to people is to listen more than you talk, and look at how people react to you when you do talk. Because if you find yourself in situations where you're constantly saying, wait, that's not what I meant, or you find yourself in situations where you realize you made people upset, or you find yourself in situations where you realize people are acting defensively towards you, or maybe they're just shutting down entirely, then there was a communication breakdown. And of course, communication is always a two-way street. It's always what you said and also how the other people in the room react to it. But what I would say is, if you don't have anybody who can help you and give you direct feedback, then look at how people react to you.
Still, though, the reaction of those people will guide us on what we need to improve, or we will get the impression that we need to improve something, but we do not know exactly what to improve. Maybe we can find out more in the WhatsApp group. I don't know if you would like to delve deeper in that, or we can skip it and find out more while we are in the WhatsApp group. But I'm very curious to find out what I need to improve more, maybe in my case. And I've got some kind of reaction, but I do not know exactly, what might that be that I need to improve, apart from my English, my native language.
So the reaction will tell you there's something, right? It won't tell you what, and it won't tell you what the other person is thinking. There are follow-up questions that you can ask when you feel. That's why I said, listen more than you speak in certain contexts. A very nice thing to do is to have a series of resources that you can activate in these situations, where you just ask the right questions to gauge whether, did I not make myself understood, or is this just a person who is, not able to understand? Do I need to rephrase? Do I need to be flexible? But these are situations that we need to learn to navigate.
That's very interesting. I have so many questions, but we don't have that much time. Is there anything else you would like to cover, Paula, in terms of the actual initiative? Something apart from the form that we will share in the comments? I just stopped searching because I saw there was a network issue, so I might be sharing that later on in the comments. Apart from the form that people, they need to actually fill in, and you will accept them most probably, and you will accept them on Friday, and you will release on Monday, as you mentioned, the information and tips. Is there anything else? And then we can go to the tools, of course, and I'm very interested in learning more about the tools that you mentioned earlier.
Absolutely, yeah. So the process is just going to repeat every week. So people will be able to sign up. You'll be able to join every week whenever you want. Door opens on Friday. We work on Mondays, and then people just talk. The form is the only formality that I have right now, and it's just to get to know people and make sure that you're a real human, and that you're, a woman, which the group is for women. So we want to make sure that we get the right people into the group, and so that's the basics of it, and that's the level that we're operating in, and it's free. And I think that's also really important.
I would like to ask about that. Why is it free? Maybe some people, they have that kind of question in their mind. Why is it for free? It will take you so much time and effort yourself to actually coordinate the whole initiative. So why is it free? Is it going to be free?
Yeah, it is free. It will stay free. It's not going to be a bait and switch kind of situation. So I decided to make it free for several reasons. Number one, because I have other stuff that if you want to pay me, you can go into my paid stuff.
Mhm.
I don't think of something as a WhatsApp group as something that I would, you know, as a product that one sells, but rather what I want to focus on is building a community of women. Of course, I do get something out of it, and it is right now at the moment I am training also in emotional regulation coaching. And so what I get out of this is also being able to listen to real people at a broader level than in my one-on-one sessions with people, and to really listen to what is going on there, what are your struggles, and that guides my own research as well, because I am actively researching the intersection between emotional regulation and second language acquisition. So that's basically, for me, it's a win-win. Yes, I put in work, of course, but also, I'm learning myself, and this is guiding my own research. And I think those are nice little spaces where everybody gets something from that exchange.
I see a lot of interest from men as well, guys, in the comments. Hello, Yasin. Let us know where are you watching us from. So you might be disappointed about the circle. It's
Sorry,
only
guys.
and we also describe why in the beginning of the video. So if you're watching the recording, you can go back and watch the beginning of the video where we are describing why is it only for women. So let's go to the tools that everyone might be waiting for. We actually mentioned them earlier. You mentioned them as well. They're going also to be included in the actual circle, this initiative, this community. So you would like to describe more about that or to tell us more, Paula?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that I have discovered, so to say, I didn't discover it, but rather learned. I think learn is a better word. One of the things that I learned in what I've been training in, which I mentioned earlier, is we all have the necessary resources within ourselves to overcome these high stakes, high stress situations. What we're not always well versed in is how to activate the right resource. And by resource, I mean our own psychological resources, how to activate the right resource in the right context. So a lot of times we will react to a situation when what we should do is take a step back, take a deep breath, analyze the situation for a second or two, and rephrase what we're trying to say. And so the resources that I'll be sharing every week are guidance in how to do that, how to know, when is it time to really take that step back? What should I ask myself in that key moment? And so that when I open my mouth to say something, I say exactly what I want to say, and I'm in control of the situation, and it's not the stress and the lack of confidence and all these other things we talked about sort of hijacking the communication. I learned something really interesting from the neuroscience field, which is how a specific part of the brain that's called the amygdala can get hijacked in certain situations, and then people react a little bit less rationally. And it occurred to me, well, this is the same thing that happens in language. When we understand that process, and we understand that really everything that we're experiencing right now is tied to this emotional stress, then we can activate not just the emotional tools, but also the linguistic tools that are in our brain that we already have because we do speak the language, that we just need to know when to use them and how to use them wisely in the moment, or how to train ourselves to be more flexible in these moments. So when I talk about tools, what I'm going to be talking about are some key questions that we can ask ourselves to sort of begin to train our brains to know how to react to these situations. I'm also going to be sharing very clear and tangible examples of language that automatically is interpreted as being too harsh or too assertive, and how we soften that. So I'm also going to be sharing the steps of what we do with words specifically to get from where we don't want to be in that really stressed moment to how we really do want to sound in that moment.
That's so interesting. And I think it's very helpful also for us as translators, interpreters, and language professionals in case that we want to win negotiation situations, like we are on a discovery call with our clients, we're afraid on getting on a call with our clients because we lack the knowledge or we're not native speakers, or if we are native speakers, sometimes we don't have the skills to communicate what we have in our mind correctly. So I think it's going to be helpful not only for us, of course it's for us, but I think all women are invited in such a circle, a community. Paula, is that correct? That they would like to build, as you mentioned here, clarity and confidence in communication. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. I am looking though for professional women. So if you're more interested in like learning English for traveling, then that's not the right group. Right. So it
Okay.
is women who communicate professionally and who, do face these professional challenges when they
So
communicate in
high
English.
stakes communication in professional environments, either has to do as a freelancer or as a business owner, or you are an employee and you would like, as you mentioned the example earlier, to get a higher position in your current working environment. So whatever it might be. And also if you have questions, you can contact Paula directly. How you would like to be contacted, Paula, in case someone would like to find out more?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm quite easy to
The
find
name
there.
here? See the
Yeah,
name here.
with my name, with Paula-Klammer. You can reach me through my website, paulaklammer.com. You can
Mhm.
email me. My email is really easy. It's paula@paulaklammer.com. So there's like absolutely, like, I'm just so easy to find right
And
now.
to get more information about how they can work with you is at paulaklammer.com. That's the website
Mhm.
where they can find more information about how they could be able to work with you in case they would like to take a step further.
Absolutely. Yes, you can
Mhm.
visit my website, and you can schedule a one-on-one call with me
Mhm.
there.
Okay, which is, I think, free of charge, just to discover if you are a good fit together.
Exactly.
But guys, find out more about Paula on her LinkedIn account. You can contact her directly. It's one of the people I really admire myself. She has done a lot for the community. She has helped a lot, at least in the past that I recall. And I really believe in this initiative because Paula is behind of this. And I would definitely suggest you to trust it, because if Paula says something, that's it. There are no things to be hidden behind of this. So if you're watching the recording, let us know in the comments. Paula, is there anything else you would like to add, something that we missed of the things that you would like to cover today?
No, I just want to say a very warm thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you so much for your kind words and for your endorsement here. I really appreciate it a lot.
I
And
appreciate
yeah,
it a lot.
I look forward to seeing people in the group, and I think we can build a really wonderful community together. So, everybody who really feels like they need that extra layer of support is absolutely welcome.
Thank you so much. I really love to support such initiatives that they have as a main purpose to help other people. And there are no hidden purposes there. So guys, if you have more questions, contact Paula directly. I'm very glad to have you here, to meet you after so long time that we haven't met in person, or let's say online. So guys, let us know if there are any more questions in the comments. We will be sharing the link. So Paula, if you would like to share the link of the form in the comments afterwards in the event section of LinkedIn, people will be able to find it there.
Okay.
And if you would like to share anything, I would be glad to do that. So just to take a minute to invite people to my upcoming free masterclass, if I'm not taking your time, because I'm, let's say, organizing a free masterclass next week for translators and interpreters only. So it's not for the women's circle, it's irrelevant. So if you would like to create your strategy for 2026, that's what I've been doing so far. So I would like to see you inside that masterclass. You still have time to register. And of course, see you on LinkedIn with Paula there. And if you have more questions, and I'm also registered in this community, so I would love to see you on WhatsApp with Paula starting from Monday, I suppose, and we will be accepted tomorrow if we have filled in the form. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Paula. And we're closing the live, and see you online. So you stay here with me.
Okay.
Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you for joining us live.